All right, we are now joined by a very special guest, Mike Gambino, head coach here at Penn State University. First and foremost, thanks so much for having us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for coming out. It's fun hanging out with you guys.
Yeah, you allowed us to be here yesterday. Got to see practice. Two things were very evident to us, jumped off right away, is how you guys treat people and also how important details are. Can you explain to me why those two things are so important for your program?
Well, I guess the how we treat people part, I don't even know if that's something that we really talk about. It's just who we are and who we expect our boys to be. And, I mean, that's kind of like a golden rule thing, right? You just sort of assume, but it is important to us how we treat each other as a staff, how we treat each other from a coach to player, the player to player, but out in the community. Like, it's really, like I said, it's just about the golden rule. Like, be a good person, right? And then the level of detail that we put in to things, even from a language point, a lot of times we talk about do the little things, and we've talked to staff and talked to our boys about not using that term little things, but using the term details, because where the feet is from shortstop to second base and which side of the body is, or which side of the body the feet is on, or when and how you set up as a catcher to get to where you need to be to receive the ball correctly. While that might seem like a little thing in a drill when you're working on it, when it changes a baseball game, it changes a season, it doesn't become a little thing anymore. So we talk about just make sure we get really, really good at all these details. And then part of that is because once you know that once the game starts, all hell's going to break loose, right? Like, that's purposefully, right? Like, you're competing against somebody, and your plans are not going to go as exactly how you wanted them. And the throw from the outfielder into the infielder in a relay situation is not always going to be where you want it. So I have to be really good at getting myself into that right spot to throw the runner out or whatever it is. So, if we can be really good in our details from a planning standpoint with the staff, our language with how we're communicating, and then stay on those details with the boys as we're helping them develop, because the ultimate goal is when the game starts, like, the number one thing, yes, it's about winning, but winning's a byproduct, I believe. Like, I want them to be able to play completely free, no fear, no worry, no doubt. Like, you against me, we just compete and have a blast. Not have a fun, winning doesn't matter, right? This is not your orange wedges at halftime and everybody gets a trophy. But just really enjoy competing together, competing against other team, because I do believe that does lead to winning.
I would imagine that if you're winning every day, if you're winning in the details, then it is the winning on the field comes after that. So when you talk about you just turn into the compete mode when the game goes on, so that way you're not thinking about what side that feed has to be on, as you mentioned in an example. Is it just about hammering that home every single day to them and being consistent with your message? Because it seems like it's everything for you guys. It's not just the stuff out there on the field. It's the stuff that they're doing off the field too, whether it's in, the weight room or the training room or how they keep their locker. Is it just messaging every day and being consistent so that they know that this is the standard and anything less isn't acceptable?
Yes. But at the same time, the why to me is critically important, right? Like, I don't want them to feel like we're constantly breaking their chops about things that don't matter. Right? It's understanding, okay, here's why it matters. So, for example, when we're keeping, in the mudroom where the guys put their shoes, if that looks sloppy, here's why it matters, boys. So here's why it's important to me and to us for our program and our culture. Why? Just take the extra second to make sure it's done right. Right? So when we talk about discipline and accountability, I don't want this program to be about discipline. I don't want it to be about disciplining players or holding them accountable. I want it to be a culture of discipline and a culture of accountability where, if I don't do something well, if there's a typo on a practice plan, or if I'm not, they should hold me accountable. They should call me out, right? Like, if I forget something at practice or whatever it is, I want that, right? And they'll kind of laugh or something when they have to do it, but it'll happen. And the other accountability, I will do it all the time where I'll do something, say something, make a mistake, and be like, hold on a second, boys, that's on me. I got to do a better job. Apologize.
And then you mentioned a word that is used and you hear it everywhere, right? Culture in any organization, whether it's athletics or not. Do you think, though, in baseball, in college baseball specifically nowadays, with the transfer portal and the turnover of rosters, which seems to have increased, is there a difference in how you build culture? Is it harder to build culture? Is there any difference at all, or no difference in building a culture?
Different. Choose your hard, right? Like it's always hard building a good culture in any program, in any company, whatever it is, right? So like there's just different things that are hard. I think the thing that we're intentional about with our culture building starts with how we recruit and what we talk about in our recruiting process. We have great facilities. We have great resources. We have all these things. Most of the time, most of what we are talking about in the recruiting process is who we are, what do we care about. This is our culture. This is important to us. If this doesn't line up, I understand, right? But then this probably isn't the right place for you. And partly because if they don't want to hear what we're talking about every day, they're not going to be happy. We're not going to be happy. They're not going to reach their potential, right? It's not going to be enjoyable for anybody. So I'm completely comfortable. And it also goes back to how I think we look at the recruiting process, right? It's not just about getting players. It's about finding kids that are the right fit, helping kids find the right fit. I have had conversations where you talk to a kid and in the process, he starts talking about the things that are important. And you're like, hey, man, like that stuff is really good stuff. That's not who we are, right? So if those are things that are important to you, call me, man. If you need something, I'll help you. I'll help you sort through the process, but it's probably not a good match, right? Like if it's a local kid that says, I want to go to California for college, like, okay, great. I'm just using that as an example, but I think they have to understand who we are and what we care about. So then when we hold a kid accountable when they're here, right? Well, we told them like, this is what's going to be important to us, right? We run 300s in the fall when we get here. And honestly, there's from a base, we're very intentional about what we do from a player development standpoint. And when we're running kids and lifting kids and working on the field, 300s doesn't have a real baseball impact. It's more of a competing and culture building and kind of seeing where we are. And we had a freshman, they touched the line with a foot and miss a line by an inch and a half. Pooch, he was on the other side of me. Pooch caught it, called it out. That one doesn't count. And when you talk about culture building, the kid after was like, thanks, coach. Like, I got to be better than that. Like, here we go. Right? Like, these are lessons because whether we want to or not, somebody is holding you accountable. Right? If you don't do a good, you don't stand on those details in your job, someday your boss is going to fire you. And if this boss doesn't fire you, you're going to lose a client or like somebody holds you accountable. It never fails. So how do we do a really, really good job holding ourselves accountable so nobody else has to?
How do you go about instilling that other than those situations that you just talked about? Is there a way to kind of teach that and get guys to buy into that without, necessarily just waiting for something to happen? Is there stressors you can put on them or environments you can create that will kind of create that accountability? Because I would guess that if things are going the way you want it to, it's not always you or one of your assistants having to hold people accountable. They're holding each other accountable, right?
We talk about that as part of the foundation of our culture. When we talk through our culture, kind of talk about it as a bit of a pyramid. The foundation of that pyramid is just the idea of Ubuntu. I am because we are, right? That none of us can reach our potential without all of us, right? So how does that play out every day? It's everything from like real unbridled joy when somebody else has success. Like you can really be excited about that. And you and I can be competing for a job and helping each other get better every day. Right. We were talking blocking with our catchers yesterday, and we're sitting there and Joe DiMucci and Nate Voss are talking to our two freshman catchers about how they block and what are their feels and how do they get their body in the right spot. So, I'll teach you some stuff but everybody has different things that make sense to their body. And all these guys are all competing for jobs against each other, but we love each other and care about each other enough. I think especially with boys, we think that love and toughness are antithetical, right? And and same thing with they think vulnerability means you're not tough as well. And like, those are not the case. You can be tough and competitive and really care about each other. And care about each other that, hey, man, you and I are both going to work on receiving this ball together. And I'm going to teach you and you're going to teach me. And that's our job. I got to get better and I got to get you better. And we put it into every drill. You'll see Mark with the infielders yesterday talking about, and then all of a sudden he'll say, hey, what do you got? How do you do this? What do you think? So it's something that just happens every day. And then you start seeing it with the older guys when something happens and they'll grab me like, I got it. I'll talk to them. Okay, right, great. But it works the flip side too. I mean, we have a freshman that came in hurt, and I was talking to one of the other freshmen the other day, man, like checking on him. Let me know what you got. Not like talking bad behind the, like, because sometimes they'll say to us, I'm fine. Okay, just go check on him. Make sure he's okay. Report back to me. He's in a good spot. Awesome.
I would imagine then trust and relationship building is extremely important then to create a culture like that, to create accountability. Is that right? I guess is what I'm asking. How important is it to create trust between
I don't know if it's right or wrong. It's what we do.
Yeah.
So the trust, you can't have a relationship with anybody without trust. The whole thing falls apart without trust, right? Like, if you're asking somebody to fix your car, you need to be able to trust that work is going to get done the way you asked for it. Or I guess wouldn't be the way I asked for it because I don't know anything when I pick up the hood. But if this thing's broken, I need it fixed, and I need you to do what I say, and I need you to charge me what it actually costs. If that can't happen, I can't go to that guy. I got to go to somebody else, right? Like, you need the basis for any relationship. It has to start with trust. They have to know and understand, and I will just communicate our why all the time. Hey, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it, right? And if something changes, I'll communicate that with them as well. But these guys, I believe, and they know that for better or for worse, we're going to be upfront and we're going to be honest with them, right? And then hold them accountable to those standards. And then if we make a mistake, we'll be accountable ourselves.
Switch gears a little bit. You're heading into year 3. We've been up here a couple of times, and every time we come up here, just blown away by the people, what seems to be investment in athletics, investment in the students in general, not even just on the athletic side, the town, everything. What's your message to people who maybe recognize the brand but don't understand what Penn State baseball is trending towards, what it can be, and even this university as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, I think that starts with the president, Neil Beneputi, how important athletics is to the mission of Penn State in general, and then Pat Kraft, our athletic director. When there's a lot of places that talk about student athlete experience, and I think sometimes that gets turned into just like give the kids stuff. Pat talks about student athlete experience in a different way. Student athlete experience is, are we giving the athletes what they need to reach their potential to win championships? Like, that's the standard here. And you see our football team is on the verge of another national championship, I believe, maybe multiple going forward. What our wrestling program, I mean, it's literally the greatest dynasty in any sport ever. It's insane. Women's volleyball, men's lacrosse is about to win. Both soccer is a championship level elite. Gymnastics was, I mean, you can go on and on and on. And Pat is making sure that investment level is here in baseball as well. Our alumni are excited about it. The town has been excited about it. It's part of why we all came, because we all believe in that vision. Everybody told us what they believed Penn State baseball could be if there was an investment at a high level. Pat Kraft, Vinny James, our deputy AD, he's a PA guy who played college baseball in Pennsylvania. These guys they're committed, which is, there's only one reason you move your family, not all the way across the country, but, and the build for all of us as a staff, it's fun. It's really, really exciting.
What excites you most about what the future looks like for you in this program? Like, when you wake up every day, what gets you the most excited about coming to work?
I think, well, for me, I guess that's two separate questions, because, when it comes to the program, none of that should or I would ever want to be about me. The thing that gets me excited coming to work every day, the thing that I love, I love our staff, but I love watching players grow and develop. Like that. I love the fall. I love being on it. I love the coaching aspect. It's not that I don't love the spring. The game's great. And teaching during games is a whole nother level, and that's tremendously fun. But like seeing guys come in and reach their potential and grow and develop is awesome. And again, I keep saying this, like we're about winning championships. We're going to host a regional here. I tremendously believe in that. I believe that we will go to the College World Series here. But I believe all those will be byproducts of building out an elite player development system and an elite culture. And I think if we can all of our energy and those things I love, plus like not many people get to go to work every day. I mean, I love what we're doing. We can't take ourselves too seriously. I mean, we wear what amounts to a costume to work every day. You know what I mean? Yep. So like, so we can work tremendously hard and have that be fun, right? It's not fun or work, right? It's not like I don't think like silly and messing around is fun. Like that's not fun to me. Right. Fun is like getting after it, working hard with people you love and people you care about.
You want to be an elite player development program. What kind of infrastructure, and starting with your role where it's top down, do you have to have in place as far as resources, staff? How do you go about building that out so that the main focus can be player development? Because like you said, sometimes I feel like there is a fine line to walk of we want to be player development driven, but you have to win too, right? So like, yeah, it's great if guys are hitting PRs in the weight room and hitting PRs in velocity and bat speed and all that stuff, but if it doesn't translate to wins, then you got to change the system. So what does it take to build a player development driven program?
So we break it down. We talk about throughout it sort of 3 different phases of everything that we're doing to get back to like why the winning is important, or the fact that winning is important. And to get to that point where the winning happens, first we talk about, there's times that we're in our skill acquisition. Okay. We're teaching. We're slow. Yesterday from a workload standpoint, we knew it was a lower workload day from a practice standpoint as we look at, measuring everybody's workload every day. So it was a lower workload day. It was a high skill acquisition day. So from a catching standpoint, for example, we were blocking, we were teaching blocking, we were getting ourselves in the right spot. It wasn't a tremendous amount of reps, but it was a very high focus learning. Okay, you have days like that. And then there are days that are skill development days. Okay, so this is, maybe it's higher rep, maybe it's harder. You're taking guys, past the level of their ability in whatever this skill is we're talking about, and then letting that ability catch up. So, facing velo, facing 100 off a machine and letting them struggle, facing a really good breaking ball, or having the machine cranked up in blocking to stay with the catchers. Like, we're going to make this really hard today, boys. It's going to be hard mentally. It's going to be hard physically. Like, this is getting better. And then you have times where we're just competing and you throw that out, right? Maybe that's a live day. It's a scrimmage day. You're on the mound. I'm hitting. We're playing. All this doesn't matter. Let's just go figure out how to win. And that you have to figure that out as well, right? Like, you can have a skill, but how do you translate it into a win and loss becomes, can we be so focused on our player development? Can we so focused on making sure our players have the skills that they need to be out there and have the ability to make decisions at game speed at a really high level? So then they're playing with no fear, no worry, no doubt, right? Now now your talent level can come out, right? And I also think that I do believe that combining that with kids who care about each other and care about winning, then hopefully you can, steal a football term, you can outkick your coverage, right? Because everybody's working hard, everybody's got talented players. Like how do you find some edges? How do you win within some of those margins? So going back to it, you build that infrastructure on everything we're doing. We take our data. I want our program to be elite at using data, at using our analytics. Okay, that's really, really important to me. But never losing the old school, the grit, the playing really good baseball, running the base as well, throwing the ball to the right base, holding one, like all those things that people might consider old school or tough or gritty or whatever it is. Like, I think we can do both. You know, the data, how we look at it, that really just comes down to decision making. Like, can we make really, really good decisions? First off the field on our player development, ultimately down there, right? Like, one of the terms I use when we talk about is having our program creating a really good decision making apparatus. So all of our decisions across the board are made well with the information that you have. You know what I mean? I used to play a lot of poker.
Okay.
This was, before kids. I mean, I don't know. I liked it. But you think about poker, right? And I loved it. I played a lot. Again, I was single and had the time. But if you think about, I look at data, and I will still watch poker. Like if sometimes if I'm home at night and the World Series is on, I'll watch that. Well, it's a much easy decision-making process of what would I do when I'm watching poker on TV, and I know what all four guys that are in the hand have, and I have the percentages
right next to it.
That's a much easier decision than when I'm sitting at the table and all I know are my two cards. So I kind of look at that. If you extrapolate that out with our program, like, hey, let's get all the information and then make the best decision we can at that time with the information that we have, and then see. And that's kind of what I want to teach these boys out here, right? Like, I want them comfortable enough that when the ball is hit, there's a line drive hit in the right center field gap, our center fielder can rip through it, come up. He has it in his database. He knows his information. He knows our principles, that he can come up and rip through the play and throw it through whatever cut he has made that decision based on where the runners are, and then we can make a decision after that. But as soon as, if you're unprepared, if you're not prepared and you're uncertain out there, then you're in between. One, guys get hurt, and two, you'll never reach your potential.
There's a lot in that answer that I'd like to get into. I want to start here from something you just said. You talked about being able to have the player development and be really good at that, while also having some of that old school grit. In my opinion, and you can tell me if I'm wrong here, we teeter in baseball a little bit on that. We've gotten so good at developing players because of the resources that we have, which are incredible. And it's everywhere. There's local facilities that high school guys can go to. Every college program you go to, they have these unbelievable resources. But sometimes it feels like we are so focused on the one-on-one battle of pitcher-hitter, and the other stuff gets left behind a little bit. Sounds like to me in that last answer, you think that we can also do the little things that are the margins that help you win when you're competing against other talented programs. How do you then find the time to focus on both? Because you won't, time is a constraint, right? And then also, how do you know, hey, this is what we need to focus on right now versus maybe the other one?
So if I go back to front, the last part I think is constantly in flux, right? Like getting a feel for each kid, each team, each player, where the team is, and that can go back and forth. I think maybe to hit on that, we were doing base running reads at second yesterday.
Right.
First time teaching it to the group. One of the things we talk about every fall is we go back to kindergarten with everything. So we're teaching no out, one out read, base running reads at second base in small groups while we're hitting on the field, starting our seniors and our freshmen at the same spot. Teach the principles. One of the guys had a really good question, and we're doing it, we're talking sort of bigger picture here, so there's not fielders out there. We're focusing mostly on balls to the outfield, right? And how do we make this reads? How do we make these reads? There's a line drive sort of near where a second baseman would have been. An older guy did a great job going back on a line. And one of the freshmen asked the question, well, what if he didn't catch it? You're not going to score. Perfect question. Exactly what you want. So we're able to talk in that situation about, you're talking about game speed decisions. Yes, in this scenario, and we don't know where that guy is. So then we can talk through, your first job is knowing where so if there's a big right-handed hitter up and the second baseman's playing up the middle, that wouldn't be a back and alive. We're in this drill, we're talking about everybody is playing straight up. In straight up, would he have caught that? I don't know. But in game speed, that ball in that area, you have to go back. If you don't, you're doubled up. And that means that if he doesn't catch it, you might not score, which we're okay with. And then the next thing, I asked one of our older guys, I said, and if he goes back in the line and that ball gets through and we don't score, what should our bench say? And one of the older guys, he's like, yeah, the whole bench should be like, well done, awesome job. Like, our bench should explode on a really good base running read because your process was right. Even though maybe it was just outside of the reach of the second baseman, that's a great base running read, so it should be rewarded. Right? So you like sort of do that all the way through. And you're doing that so that like that teaching point then it's a culture point. It's a what do we value point. And that freshman doesn't have to like run to third, be like, oh my gosh, should I have scored? Because he understands, no, that was the read.
Right.
But then we also explained that's also different. Like I said, going back to if all three of the infielders on the left side of the infield and that ball gets hit, you should be off. Right? So we reward our decision-making process and then deal with the results. And as long as they're prepared, right, they also understand, like, we make our mistakes being aggressive. If a kid is ever bang out at a base, other than end of a game, down late situations. Other than that, I know you're not supposed to make the third out at third base in the old base, but whatever. But like, if they're bang out, they're never going to get in trouble because I want them to be aggressive. I understand that they're college players, but they're going to make mistakes. If all our mistakes are always being aggressive and trying to make plays, I think over the long haul, we'll be better. Because I don't want them in between, and I don't want them. I want them to be able to play free. You know.
I love that. And so is that something then that, like, we get into the spring, right? So you're going back to kindergarten in the fall. We get into the spring. Is that stuff that you're having to recheck up on? Like, are you still doing that type of stuff in the spring where it's like, hey, we need to go back over this because, you know, maybe it's reactionary to something that happened over the past weekend, or is it not reactionary where you're just having like checkpoints throughout the season where it's like, we haven't talked about reads at second in a couple months. Let's just hit back on it.
You can't do everything all the time in the spring, but there are certain things that we're hitting all the time. And when we do, it's tremendously focused on game speed reads, right? One of my sort of foundational coaching principles for me is that I don't believe in baseball instincts. I don't believe that there's any reason that, like, when I think of instincts, like like there's nothing innate in us that lets us know when I should go first or third. You know what I mean? Like, right. There's something instinctual that makes me run away when I hear something rustle in the woods. Right. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we don't have that. Right. So to me, baseball instincts are a database. It's my job to help them build that database. Now, some kids have databases that are stickier than others. Some can access that information quicker. And that's the thing you got to figure out. And in those cases, like, you have to figure out what you're going to ask each kid to do and what are they capable of doing. And right. So that's another conversation. But the only way we're going to be able to be good at reads at second base, you know, the reason big leaguers looks like they're moving slowly, even though that game is so fast, is they've just seen the play so many times. Right. So they know what's happening. So when that ball gets hit for that runner at second base, he's seen it. Now, you'll see, you know, rookies when they get up, the game is fast, and all of a sudden something happens in it. But, you know, when you watch those guys up in the big leagues, it's just so slow for them because they've seen it. They have the database. They can access the information. They've seen this play out before.
Moving back into some of the development stuff now, talking about the data. Again, at practice yesterday, it looked like everything was being tracked, right? How do you balance kind of the not overloading them with too much information, especially when you start talking about TrackMan and that type of information, and when you're talking, you know, both offensively and on the mound. You know, offensively, we can overload a guy if he gets too mechanical, and you don't want that. Then he's not playing loose. And if you're on the mound, if you're out there thinking about mechanics, you got no shot, right? So how do you balance, you know, giving them the information that they need to get better and, you know, that skill acquisition, and without overloading them?
That's a legit player-to-player thing, right? Like, let me use a scouting report as an example for that. I know we're talking play development, but I think the idea is applicable. right? We have so much information. We know the shapes of pitches. We know percentages of pitches. You know all that stuff, right? You can't have a guy walk in the batter's box being like, all right, he's 37% fastball on this count, but he's 47 in this count. Like, it's too much, right? Okay, so how do we take all this information in the scouting report and break it down to something that's simple, that's actionable, and aggressive? Hey, he carries the ball at the top of the zone. You got to be 2 baseballs above it. Done. That's what we got.
Easy.
Right? Same, and now other kids, right? We'll put the stuff up. Some guys want to see the plot. Some guys just want to hear. Some guys want to say, hey, man, it's carry. Some guys just want to know. Some guy might want to know, hey, he's got really good extension of his fastball. Some other kid might just want to be like, hey, it gets on you a little bit. So you figure that out and you say it in different ways. I know the board says 92, it's 95. Okay, 95. Done. Some other kid wants to say it's above average extension. Oh, okay. You're saying the same thing. You know what I mean? Hey, this kid's got 21 inches of vert. Hey, just get above it. Same thing. How does that kid understand that? Same thing with your pitch design. Some kids want to throw a pitch and see it because it makes sense. Like some of our guys can walk in and see data on a screen, like, oh, that's my stuff. And some kids are like, I don't really know what it means. I just know that, like, this is how I throw my curveball. Okay. Right. So how do you translate it into their feels and how do they make that becomes a very individualized thing? What I want from a data standpoint, I do not want them overloaded at all, but I don't think I'm preparing them professional baseball if I'm not at least making sure they have a baseline understanding of the language for when they get there. Right? Some guys want to talk about the launch angle. Some other guys want to talk about, hey, we're hitting the ball hard on the line. It doesn't matter what the conversation is to get that kid there. Right? And, but even the kid that doesn't want to talk about it should at least understand, yeah, this is what we're talking about. Here's why. Okay, good. But I don't want to think about it. Great.
Right.
And none of them should be thinking about it when they get to the plate, right? We're not talking about spin. Like, the only thing you want our pitcher to understand is what are my feels? What are my cues? What are my adjustments? Great. We'll talk pitch design after.
Right. And then when you're within the player development time frame or however you want to put it, when you're chasing a goal as a player, and maybe you've been focusing on a certain thing that they've needed to improve on, are there then checkpoints where you're checking back in with them and you're kind of reevaluating what they've been doing and saying, hey, we've gotten to this point, now we need to pull back because this is starting to slide and things like that? And how often are you checking in with things like that?
Yeah, so part of that process, we're sort of tweaking that process a little bit as we go right now. Jake Stone is building a really good play development system in the background where we have something that we can sit and show them and say, hey, this has been the thing that's been the most important thing. You're doing a great job with it. Now let's move to this, right? So you can move them down the line. You also want to make sure, there's a saying that as soon as a measurement, we need to measure everything, right? But as soon as a measurement becomes a goal, it stops being a good measurement anymore. What I mean by that, let's use exit velocity, right? Yes, exit velocity is tremendously important. We know the data and we know what increases in bat speed then translate to increases in exit velocity, which then translate to increases in batting average and WOBA, but we can run through all that. But you can go get more bat speed and more exit velocity in ways that don't translate to success on the field and being able to hit, right? So I can go and get my barrel moving and hit a ball off a tee and hit it harder and keep hitting it harder and harder, but that's not applicable. So how do you go back and forth and make sure that we're measuring? We want to get enough data that we're measuring it, a lot and get a ton of data, but also picking times that like, hey, this is a time that like, this doesn't matter because we're learning, or this doesn't matter because we're just like, this is not a time that the measurables are important to us right now. Right. So like, and then making sure you're looking at multiple things again, like, bat speed and exit velocity doesn't matter if your swing decisions are bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So how do how do we taking that and saying, okay, good, man, this is important to you. we've made strides. Now here's our next thing, right? This is our one big thing at this point. Now move to this one big thing, because you can't get better at everything all the time. And then it also comes down to an identity thing, right? An undersized left-handed hitter that can really, really run. His swing decisions are more important than his exit velocity, because he's not. It doesn't mean that he doesn't need to grab exit velocity, but and his launch angle has got to be different than a right-handed hitter that drives a baseball to the park, right? Like that guy that maybe shoots a ball through the right side in an 0-0 count. That's not your job, whereas the left-handed hitter, getting him on base, like each guy understanding those things. Velocity is great, but and we understand that more velocity and the strides and velocity, help with FIP and help with ERA and help with all these other. But it doesn't matter if you can't shoot pitches, and it doesn't matter if you're nothing's near the zone, right? So you have to have that combination of your data and your analytics and your feel and your identity, and put that all together. Again, with the ultimate goal is, once they're out there, just go get them, boys. Like, have fun. We're not worried. All we're worried about is the competing.
This might be a basic question, and it's kind of something we've talked about, but maybe phrased differently. How do you guard from guys tinkering too much? Because I feel like when you peel back hitting, the concept of hitting and the concept of pitching, there's so many different ways to get the desired results. And now we have resources that can track those results and tell you, and we have video of all kinds, and we're constantly looking at video and spin rate and all those things. How do you keep guys from constantly wanting to tinker and just kind of understanding who they are and what they do best?
It's a constant battle, but it's a constant battle for all of us, right? Like, I'm constantly trying to tinker with everything we're doing here, right? Like, what can I do? But sometimes you have to be like, okay, we're going with this right now, right? So I think it's a constant battle for everybody and all the time. And I think a lot of it is teaching. Part of what we want to teach the guys here, we want them to be part of their player development. It's Will sitting down weekly with our pitchers, going over everything that they're doing and why they're doing it and their routines. And it's fine if they're able to come in and say, hey, in summer ball, our pitching coach showed us this, or this guy has this routine, or over the winter I worked at, I was working with my guy back home and he said this. Like, that's a constant thing. But also making them understand, say, hey, whatever the tinker is, that's not wrong. But for where you are, we're not there yet. That's not something, or that's great, but this is where you are. This is the problem that's going to cause in your thing, and just sort of talk them through and make them understand the why. And again, preparing them professional baseball, right? You have to. This is not a knock on professional baseball. This is just what it is. That you could end up with multiple hitting coaches in the same year if you move up a couple levels. So, like, you could have in the same summer 3 different hitting coaches and a coordinator coming in. That's not a bad thing. That's an awesome thing. If you understand how to take that in, how to process it. I mean, some people will say that's terrible. That's terrible. No, that's awesome. If you can understand, I can listen to you. I can take what it is. I can mess with it, and then I can take what I want from it, and then do that with the next guy, and then the next guy, and then we're all working together. I don't care where the information comes from. If a guy comes back to us and says, "Hey, this guy showed me this pitch," like, let's go. Hey, talk to and we do with our guys. Our guys should be talking to each other all the time, right? So it's, how do you feel good that, like, there's a difference between tinkering, which I'm kind of okay with, and like constant changing and darting back and forth that you're never able to make progress. The other thing is, they need to understand that player development, any type of learning, growth, whatever, it's not a straight line.
Sure.
Right. So it's the stock market, right? You zoom in and the stock market does this. You zoom out and the stock market does this. We got to sometimes be able to zoom out, like, hey, you're okay. Right. I know we're doing this right now. You're okay. It's okay that you're doing that, and here's why. The other thing you forget, like, not for nothing, these kids are still growing. Like, actually,
sure.
like, right, kids get taller, kids get bigger, they add weight, like, their bodies move differently. All of a sudden, their hand is farther away from their head than they thought when they were throwing, and like, or they just stretched out and they don't have the core strength yet. Like, those are real things. And we like, it happens all the time. We'll have a kid that you give him one size shirt in in the fall, and by the spring, they got to go in like, hey, I kind of outgrew my stuff. And you don't think of that
awesome.
for college kids.
Right.
But like, you think of that for my, for my 8 and my 10-year-old.
Right.
But we have kids in college outgrow stuff.
Right. How important is it for them? Like if you want guys to really get better and you want to develop, you have a limited number of coaches. How important is it for guys to be in charge of their own development? Because I feel like at the end of the day, if coach cares and coach is putting together the perfect plan for you, you're not invested in it, no shot you get better. So how important is it for them to, encompassing that, like them taking charge of their development, their own development, and within that, understanding what they do best, asking the right questions, seeking information? How important is that if you're going to develop the culture you're looking to?
One of the pillars of our culture, right? We talked a little about the foundation being I am because we are. One of those pillars right above that is humility and hard work. On our pillars, we sort of pair up some values. I don't think that any improvement, any self-improvement can ever happen without humility. We sometimes think that you can't be humble and confident at the same time. I would drastically disagree. I think true confidence, you need humility. But we need to be, you want those boys to be humble enough to take whatever coaching is coming, whether it's from a coach or another player, right? To listen, to take, and then to work hard enough to improve at those things, whether it's a deficiency or something you're good at, you just want to get better at, right? So like, it also goes back to what we talked about in the recruiting process. I tell every kid that we're recruiting, if you don't want to play in the big leagues, if you're not driven to play in the big leagues, this is not the right place for you.
Right.
I want guys that want to be big leaguers. I also want guys that care about this degree and care about their academics. It's not an either or thing. But you want guys that are driven, that care, that are getting after it, that are taking some ownership in that stuff. This is a team effort. It's not me getting you better, me as a coach, you as a player. It's us working together to make sure that you're reaching your potential. We'll direct it, we'll guide it, we'll help you. Sometimes you need a hug, sometimes you need a kick in the butt. All those things we're here for. But ultimately, it comes down to, are you doing the work, right? And whether that work is the work on the field, or are you getting into Greenberg for your recovery? Are you doing a good job with your nutrition and your hydration?
Kind of switching back to kind of your role and what your day looks like. Head coaches have a million things on their plate, from outside factors, from obviously the team and what's actually important now, future teams and recruiting, donors, everything. How do you decide what's important now? Because I would imagine you have a schedule every day, and there are probably a lot of days by 9:30 in the morning that schedule is blown to bits, right? Because things happen, things come up. How do you decide what's important now and what you need to focus on to make sure that you're doing what's best for the program?
It's a constant battle, I think, for all of us, right? Number one, my family's always going to come first. When you talk about building out a program, if we're saying that player development is number one, which it is, again, not instead of winning, that's our path to winning, then we also understand, like, if I'm doing something and one of the boys comes in and say, Coach, can I talk? That becomes the number one. One of the things that I constantly, you constantly have in my head, I don't know if you've ever read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, right? But your grid, like, what is our urgent and important? Like, making sure you're saying that. It's really hard. Sometimes the urgent can overwhelm the important, and you want to make sure that you're taking the important over the urgent. But that's a constant thing, a constant battle. And what's hard is, and what's really fun, I think, from a head coaching standpoint, is that you're the balance of, like you said, current team and future team. I get to sometimes be looking 3, 5, 7 years down the road and getting us ready for that, while also making sure we're doing what we need to do every day to get ready here. It's awesome when I have a staff here and I get to work with this group, that I get to work with every day, and they'll hold me accountable. Like, hey man, I have no problem. They need to come in sometimes. Like, do we need to be working on? Is that something is that important right now? awesome. Ask me, call me out on that. You know, so that thing that you like, that's it's one of the number one most important things, right? So trying to be intentional about where you're spending your time. And I wasn't great at this, this is, I spent a lot of, start of my career, really 11 of my first 13 years with one full-time assistant and then I had a second full-time assistant. Now we have a staff meeting this morning, and this goes back to Pat Kraft and the investment, but we have a full staff every other Wednesday, where we also bring in marketing and academics and nutrition and mental performance. And you pick up your head, there's 20 people in the room that are all looking at, with 20 people in the room, all looking at the growth of the program and the development of the boys, right? So how do you make sure that we are all on the same page? And then spending my time literally at night, in the morning, before I go to bed, and the first thing I do when I wake up is look at my calendar. What are the meetings I have to be prepared for? What are the meetings that I'm going into? And then all right, is this in line with what it is we want to do? And am I forgetting something? Because it can be, if you're not careful, you're running out to practice, being what are we doing today?
Right.
You know what I mean? And, and it also goes back to prep. We spend a ton of time going into the fall. We spent, not a full week, but a large part of a week really planning out our fall, going back over the spring and what we decided, in our after action review, what are the things we want to do better, and what you look at the end of last fall, what did we like or not like about last fall? How do we apply all that? Right. So make sure the fall is planned out, and then we're working within that framework.
I want to give you a chance real quick. You kind of mentioned it. I always like to give head coaches the opportunity to talk about how great your staff is. We've gotten to spend the last 2 days with your staff. A lot of people on your staff, they are awesome people, first and foremost, and getting to talk to them about baseball and kind of how they do their jobs has been incredible. How important is that for you, and the support that it gives you, and how important is it for the program in general?
Number one for me, I want to have and it comes from the investment, like we talked about, from Pat Kraft and Vinny James. But when you put together the staff, you want to have the ability to have good men around these boys as they're growing into men. So every one of these the coaches on the staff, and then the people around us in general, are great people. Having, in this case, men, not that, someday there could be a woman coaching on the staff, but in this case, men of integrity, high character, tremendous hard workers. They're also, the baseball knowledge is unbelievable. It's also a group. I mean, if you go through Pooch and I've been close, I've known Pooch for 15 years. Mock, I recruited him. I knew him since he was 15 years old. Will Jouse, I've known almost since he was born. Wheels, I've known 20 years. So we've all known each other for so long. They're great people. They're people that you want to hang out with and have a beer with, and they're people that you want, in your proverbial foxhole when you're trying to help kids get better and win baseball games and everything. And I'm tremendously, tremendously lucky that I can sit in that room. There's a genuine respect. There's a genuine caring. Jake Stone, who you got a chance to spend a little time with. Jake was here. I met him when I took the job, and immediately was yes, this is a person that you want to be around every day, and two, his ability to help us build out a player development. And then we just added, Ford, who's a tremendous addition to the staff. He's tremendously smart, and he's the guy that I've known the least from amount of time, but fit in right away. And I leaned very heavily on Will when we hired him. But when you have a group of guys you can sit around, you can enjoy being around. We can argue, which I said it in a meeting today that, silence I take as agreement. If we throw something out there and nobody says anything, I just assume we all agree. I love when we get in legit arguments, right? And, we can, whether you're talking about a player, no, I want this guy, I want this, or, hey, I want to do this, because we all know on that staff, we disagree. There's so much respect that you and I might agree, and I might be all right, you know what? I'm sorry, you and I might disagree, and I might be yeah, we're going with it. Go ahead, go. Once we leave the room, here we go, man. We're on the same page.
want to be respectful of your time. I really appreciate you sitting down. I have one last question. I like to ask this question to all the coaches we get to sit down with. If I were to fast forward 5 years into the future, what do you want this program to look like, and what do you want people to be saying?
What people are saying, we have no control over, and that's not something I worry about because, again, it's just outside your control. What do I want it to look like? We want it to be something that we talked about these pillars, right? We talked about the culture. We talked about humility, hard work. One of our other pillars is energy, execution, and edge. Another one of our pillars is gratitude and grit. The overwhelming goal that we talk about here is success with honor. So what do I want the program to look like in 5 years? I believe we will have hosted regionals here. I believe we will have had a chance to go to the College World Series here. And I would like our alumni, fans, the people in town, the people that come out to follow the program to be tremendously proud that we're having a ton of success in the field. We're winning baseball games. We've got draft picks coming out of here. Potentially in 5 years, maybe another big leaguer, I should say. But on top of that, they're just really good kids that represent Penn State well, represent the community well, represent the former players well. People that you like rooting for because they play really, really hard and they win baseball games, but they're good people.
Coach, this has been incredible. Thank you so much for the time.
Thanks for coming out. Appreciate it.